Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
In the intellectual landscape of the late 19th century, mathematics presented a curious paradox. On one hand, the discipline was experiencing a golden age of creation, with the edifice of analysis reaching unprecedented heights of complexity and utility. The powerful tools forged by Cauchy, Riemann, and Weierstrass were reshaping physics and engineering. On the other hand, the very foundations of this magnificent structure rested on conceptual quicksand. The real numbers, the lifeblood of analysis, lacked a rigorous definition, and the natural numbers, the supposed bedrock of all else, were themselves understood through a haze of intuition, empirical convenience, or Kantian philosophy. Into this foundational ambiguity stepped Richard Dedekind, not as a mere builder, but as an architect of the abstract. His 1883 monograph was sinned unto a solemn die Zahlen, or what are and what should be the numbers, was far less a timid inquiry than a bold legislative act. The title itself, with its prescriptive solemn, signals an ambition to move beyond description toward a definitive statement of intellectual policy. Dedekind's work represents a pivotal moment, a profound philosophical recalibration that shifted the basis of number from an object of intuition to a pure, logical creation of the human intellect. In doing so, it provided a durable and elegant foundation for arithmetic and, perhaps more consequentially, prefigured the profoundly structuralist paradigm that would come to dominate 20th century mathematics. The urgency of Dedekind's project grew from a deep-seated crisis within the practice of analysis. Throughout the early 19th century, mathematicians operated with a functional, if ultimately vague, understanding of continuity and limits, concepts often grounded in geometric or temporal metaphors. Augustin Louis Cauchy had initiated a program to instill greater rigor, yet his own work contained subtle appeals to intuition, leaving critical gaps in his proofs. It was the meticulous program of Karl Weierstrass, the so-called arithmetization of analysis, that fully exposed the foundational weakness. Weierstrass demonstrated that a coherent theory of calculus demanded a purely arithmetic definition of the real numbers, one free from the spectre of geometric diagrams or the fluid notion of time. His own construction, and those of his contemporaries like Georg Cantor and Eduard Hein, successfully built the continuum from the rational numbers. This achievement, however, merely pushed the problem one level deeper. The rational numbers were defined as ratios of integers, and the integers themselves were taken as primitive, their existence and properties accepted as self-evident. For many, this was entirely satisfactory. The integers were objects of direct experience, the result of counting. Our faculty Immanuel Kant had famously argued was an a priori intuition of time. For the formidable Leopold Kronecker, this was a philosophical imperative. He famously declared that God made the integers, and all else is the work of man, a statement encapsulating his constructivist creed that all valid mathematical objects must be finitely derivable from the natural numbers. This intellectual climate created a profound schism. The Weierstrassian school sought to secure analysis upon arithmetic, while figures like Kronecker viewed the very objects of that analysis, the irrational numbers and the completed infinite, as legitimate phantoms. Dedekind saw a path through this impasse. He recognized that the ultimate source of the problem was the undefined status of the natural numbers themselves. His solution was audacious: to construct the integers using nothing but the principles of pure logic, thereby liberating them from both divine authority and sensory intuition. The architecture of Dedekind's creation, detailed with serene confidence in his monograph, is a masterclass in abstraction. He begins with a declaration of intellectual independence that still resonates with revolutionary force numbers. He asserts are free creations of the human mind. They serve as a means to apprehend the diversity of things with greater ease and precision. This statement is a direct repudiation of the prevailing philosophical accounts. The numbers are products of thought, their validity resting on logical consistency alone. To build his system, Dedekind introduces a small set of fundamental concepts. His primary object of study is what he calls a system, which is in essence what we today call a set, a collection of definite, distinct objects of our thought. He then defines a mapping of a system into another, our modern notion of a function. With these simple tools, he advances toward one of the most elegant and profound ideas in the history of mathematics, a positive definition of infinity. Before Dedekind, an infinite set was typically defined negatively, as a set that is a proper subset of no finite set. Dedekind provides a structural, intel criterion. A system, he states, is infinite if it can be put into a one-to-one correspondence with a proper part of itself. The set of natural numbers, for instance, can be mapped to the set of even numbers. A proper subset, through the simple mapping that sends each number x to the number 2 times x. This concept, that an infinite whole can be equivalent in size to one of its own parts, was a piece of counterintuitive brilliance that provided a rigorous handle on the actual infinite, an idea that Kronecker and his followers viewed with profound suspicion. Armed with this definition, Dedekind proceeds to construct the natural numbers. He considers an arbitrary system, which he names S, and a mapping of S into itself. He defines a chain, or Kette in his German, as a subsystem of S that is closed under this mapping. The natural numbers, then, are defined as the chain generated by a single base element, which we may call 1, under a successor mapping. More precisely, the set of natural numbers is the intersection of all systems that contain the element 1 and are closed under the successor operation. It is the smallest possible system with these properties. This elegant construction accomplishes something remarkable. The principle of mathematical induction, for centuries an axiom or a self-evident truth about the integers, emerges in Dedekind's system as a provable theorem. It is a direct logical consequence of his definition of the number series as a minimal chain. This achievement demonstrated the immense power of his structural approach, reducing one of the fundamental principles of arithmetic to a deduction from a more primitive set of logical definitions. The influence of Dedekind's work radiated outward, shaping the very course of modern mathematics. His twin publications, the 1872 Statikkeit und irrationale Zahlen or Continuity and Irrational Numbers, which defined the real numbers via the now famous Dedekind cut, and the 1883 monograph on the natural numbers, together provided a complete and logically sound foundation for the entire number system. From into the continuum, the arithmetization of analysis was complete. One of the most immediate inheritors of his ideas was the Italian mathematician Giuseppe Peano. The celebrated Peano axioms, which today form a standard axiomatic basis for arithmetic in many introductory texts, are in large part a skillful distillation and reformulation of Dedekind's deeper constructive results. Peano himself was explicit in acknowledging his debt, recognizing that his own axiomatic presentation rested squarely on the conceptual groundwork laid by Dedekind's analysis of chains and mappings. The intellectual kinship with Georg Cantor is also profound. While Cantor's explorations of transfinite set theory were more audacious and far-reaching, Dedekind's work provided a crucial pillar of support. His rigorous, positive definition of an infinite set and his demonstration that arithmetic could be founded on set-theoretic principles lent credibility and a shared logical framework to Cantor's controversial work. The correspondence reveals a deep mutual respect between two pioneers charting the territory of the infinite. Yet the most enduring legacy of Was sind und was sollen die Zahlen may be its profound structuralism. Dedekind's central concern was less with the intrinsic nature of the number 1 and more with the properties of a system, characterized by a starting element and a successor function. He was defining the abstract structure of a simply infinite system, a template that any progression satisfying his conditions would instantiate. This focus on abstract structures defined by axioms and relations is the very essence of modern algebra, as later developed by Emmy Noether and her school. It prefigures the perspective of category theory, which studies mathematical objects through the lens of the mappings between them. Dedekind was a mathematician, a half-century ahead of his time, providing a blueprint for a new way of thinking about what mathematical objects are and what they The reception of such a profoundly abstract work was, predictably, complex. It was a text for specialists, and its austere beauty was lost on those who sought a more tangible, intuitive grounding for mathematics. The constructivist school, personified by Kronecker, would have regarded Dedekind's free creations of the mind with outright hostility, viewing his acceptance of the actual infinite as a dangerous step into theological speculation. For a time, his ideas circulated primarily among the small community of researchers concerned with foundational questions. The full force of his contribution was recognized only gradually. A significant challenge to his entire mode of thinking emerged with Bertrand Russell's discovery of a paradox at the heart of naive set theory in 1901. Russell's paradox, which considers the set of all sets that are a member of themselves, demonstrated that the intuitive notion of a system or set as any well-defined collection was logically untenable. Since Dedekind's work was built upon this naive conception, it appeared vulnerable. The crisis precipitated by this and other paradoxes spurred the development of formal axiomatic set theory, most notably the system, developed by Ernst Zamiello and later refined by Abraham Frenkel. Within this more secure framework, however, Dedekind's construction was entirely vindicated. His method for building the natural numbers could be carried out flawlessly within Zamiello-Frenkel set theory, its logical integrity intact. The problem had been with the unrestricted notion of a set, a weakness of the ambient logical environment, While the genius of his specific construction remained sound, it is telling to contrast his work with the contemporaneous Grundlagen der Arithmetik by Gottlob Frege, which pursued a similar, logicist goal. Frege's work was philosophically deeper and more formally rigorous, but its complex logical notation made it almost inaccessible to working mathematicians of the day. Furthermore, Frege's system was directly and fatally undermined by Russell's paradox. Dedekind's more mathematical, less overtly formal approach proved both more influential in the short term and more resilient in the long run. In the final analysis, what are and what should be the numbers achieved far more than its title promised. Richard Dedekind did define the numbers, but in the process, he redefined the character of mathematical truth. He severed the final tethers connecting arithmetic to the physical world and to the constraints of human intuition, re-establishing it as an autonomous discipline of pure thought. The numbers, in his vision, are what they are because of the logical structure they inhabit, a structure freely created by the human mind to impose order on a universe of ideas. His monograph stands as a monument to intellectual courage and clarity. It provided the final, crucial stone in the foundation for 19th century analysis, while simultaneously laying the cornerstone for the abstract, structuralist mathematics of the 20th. It taught mathematicians that their subject was a domain of freedom, a world whose objects and laws were theirs to legislate. For Dedekind, the numbers are what we, through the power of consistent reasoning, decree they should be, an insight whose power and elegance remain undiminished.
We really appreciate you tuning in to this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.